And welcome to the September 19th meeting of the City Council. I'm Marty Baker, President of Council. Please silence your electronic devices for the duration of the meeting. We'll begin with the invocation by Mr. William Twiss, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Bow your head. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you, a great nation that we live in and a great community that we live in. We just ask a special blessing this evening on council that we lead the city in the right direction. We just ask a blessing on all those that are serving in our military, police, fire, and servicing the community. And we just ask that in your name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Oda? Here. Mr. Tremblay?
Here.
Mr. Swayzer?
Here.
Mr. Heath?
Here.
Mr. Terwilliger?
Here.
Mrs. Sneed?
Here.
Mr. Twist?
Here.
Mr. Kendall?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
All members are present.
Mrs. Knight, please, Mrs. Knight, please read a summary of the minutes of the September 6th meeting of Torres City Council.
Minutes of Council, September 6, 2016. There were presentations by the Office of the Auditor of State and a presentation of a proclamation regarding Feed Ohio Month. Public hearings were held on ordinances number 042 and 043, both rezonings. Committee reports. Community and Economic Development Committee reported regarding an annexation of 55.8 acres from Concord Township and recommended that the required 3 pieces of legislation be approved. Law and Ordinance Committee reported regarding a liquor license. Safety and Health Committee reported committee recommends legislation be prepared approving 2016 edition of the Emergency Operations Plan. Streets and Sidewalks Committee recommended that legislation be prepared supporting the development of state and U.S. bicycle routes and specifically designating U.S. Bicycle Route 25. Utilities Committee recommended that legislation be prepared accepting the dedication of a storm sewer easement at the Hobart Institute of Welding Technology, and that legislation be prepared authorizing the director to enter into a 3-year opt-out electric generation agreement with First Energy Solutions Corporation. Resolution R35, 2016, opt-out electric power aggregation agreement, first reading and adopted. Resolution number R36, 2016, establishing services for a pending annexation, first reading and adopted. Resolution R37, 2016, establishing buffer requirements for a pending annexation, first reading and adopted. Resolution number R38, 2016, consenting to the annexation of 55.8 acres in Concord Township, first reading and adopted. Resolution number R39, 2016, designating U.S. Bicycle Route 25, first reading and adopted. Ordinance 042, 2016, a rezoning was given public hearing and second reading. Ordinance 043, 2016, a rezoning was given second reading and public hearing. Ordinance 044, 2016, adopt emergency operations plan was given first reading and adopted. Ordinance 045, 2016, approving a stormwater drainage easement was given first reading and adopted. Following comments and a presentation regarding Troy Community Works, Council did adjourn at 7:56.
Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Move we accept the minutes.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Kendall and seconded by Mr. Schweizer to approve the minutes. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Swayzer?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Go on to committee reports, and the Community and Economic Development Committee has 2 reports for us tonight. Chairman, Mr. Twist, will you present this?
Yes. Thank you, Madam President. On September 9th, committee members Kendall and Twist met to provide a recommendation to Council regarding 2 separate rezoning applications that have been presented to Council. We note that both applications have been recommended for approval by the Troy Planning Commission. We also note that the public hearings were held on both rezonings. and there were no comments made in the public hearings related to the requested rezonings. Each application is discussed in detail in the report. We have individually considered the 2 rezoning applications and support both. It is the recommendation of the committee that ordinance number 042-2016 and ordinance number 043-2016 be approved by council. Respectfully submitted by Tom Kendall, John Swayzer, and myself as chair, William Twiss.
Are there any questions from council? You may continue.
All right, our second one, the committee met on September 14th, Kendall and Schweizer, to review the recommendation of the Planning Commission that Section 4 of the Stonebridge Meadows plan development be approved. The section conforms to the approved Stonebridge Meadows plan development. It is the recommendation of this committee that legislation be prepared to approve Section 4 of the Stonebridge Meadows plan development. Respectfully submitted, Tom Kendall, John Swayzer, myself as chair, William Twiss.
Any comments or questions from council? Thank you, Mr. Twiss. The next reports are from the Finance Committee and Chairman, Mr. Kendall.
Thank you, Madam President. First subject matter is acceptance of tax rates. This committee met on September 6th to review the certifications forwarded by acceptance by the Miami County Budget Commission for the rates of tax to be levied on the general duplicates for 2016 for collection in 2017. The certifications are to be based on the city's tax budget, which council approved earlier this year. Certifications are provided geographically by school districts. It is the recommendation of this committee that legislation be prepared accepting the tax levies for the City of Troy as certified by the Miami County Budget Commission. We also support emergency legislation to meet the October 1st date by which acceptance of the certifications are to be returned to the county. And this is respectfully submitted by Mr. Swayzer, Mr. Tremblay, and myself as chairman of the Finance Committee.
Are there any questions from council? You may continue, Mr. Kendall.
Thank you. The second report has to do with the Small Business Development Loan, Integrity Services, AES LLC, doing business as REU Smoothie and Juice Bar. On September 14th, committee members Swayzer and Kendall met to consider the recommendation of the Loan Review Committee that the application for a loan in the amount of $23,383 be approved to Integrity Services AES LLC, doing business as REU Smoothie and Juice Bar, from the Small Business Development Revolving Loan Fund. The applicant intends to open a small location in downtown Troy to supplement the current business operations from a food truck, trailer, or delivery to the customer. Additional information regarding the application is discussed in the detailed report. This committee supports the recommendation of the Loan Review Committee, and we recommend that legislation be prepared approving the $23,383 loan to Integrity Services AES LLC as meeting the intent of the Small Business Development Revolving Loan Program. We further support emergency legislation so that this loan can be closed without delay in the equipment purchase. And this is respectfully submitted by Mr. Tremblay, Mr. Swayzer, and myself as Chairman of the Finance Committee.
Any comments or questions from council?
I have a question, Madam President.
Mrs. Zoda?
Patrick, can you clarify the food truck trailer delivery thing that they're talking about in here?
Well, that's just what they do now. And so they want to expand beyond that. And they want to have a brick and mortar storefront in downtown.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Kendall.
Thank you.
The next report is from the Streets and Sidewalks Committee. Chairman, Mr. Phillips, will you present that?
Yes, ma'am. Committee members Heath and Snee met on September 4th to consider Troy continuing to participate in ODOT's Bridge Inspection Program. ODOT hires a consultant to perform the annual inspections and provide the reports. Participating in the program will save staff time in inspecting 13 bridges annually and provide another entity confirming the city's analysis of the bridge work that may be needed. Participation is at no cost to the city. It's a recommendation that we do the consent legislation provided by ODOT for Troy to participate in the bridge inspection program be approved. Based on the ODOT legislation, we support the legislation being presented as an emergency. And this is respectfully submitted by Mr. Heath, Mrs. Snee, and myself as chairman of this committee. And though I was not at the committee meeting, in reading the reports, I do support this. So it was a unanimous decision to support.
Are there any questions from council? Thank you, Mr. Phillips. We now open the meeting to citizen comments. There is a 2-minute time limit at this point in the meeting, and Mr. Kerber is our timekeeper. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments related to the agenda items this evening? If so, please come to the microphone and state your name and address before addressing council. We'll move on to resolutions then and ask Mrs. Knight to read Resolution R40, 2016.
Resolution number R40, 2016, resolution authorizing tax levies for the City of Troy, Ohio for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2017, as determined by the Budget Commission and certifying such levies to the county auditor and declaring an emergency. This has to be returned to the county by October 1. The tax levies are set forth in geographic and in school district locations. First reading.
Are there any questions from council?
Move for suspension.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Kendall and seconded by Mr. Heath to suspend the rules. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Schweizer and seconded by Mr. Twist to adopt the resolution. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
The resolution is adopted.
Mrs. Knight, please read Resolution R41, 2016.
Resolution number R41, 2016, resolution approving the application of Integrity Services AES LLC for assistance from the Small Business Development Revolving Loan Fund and declaring an emergency. This is a loan in the amount of $23,383, has been recommended by the Loan Review Committee, reported on this evening. First reading.
Are there any questions from council?
Move for suspension.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Kendall and seconded by Mr. Schweizer to suspend the rules. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Move for adoption.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Kendall and seconded by Mr. Tremblay to adopt the resolution. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Mrs. Knight, please read Resolution R42, 2016.
Resolution number R42, 2016, resolution authorizing consent and cooperation with the Ohio Department of Transportation for the bridge inspection program within the City of Troy, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. The city has been involved in the bridge inspection program for the prior 3 years. This is a new 3-year authorization. First reading.
Are there any comments or questions?
Move suspend.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Schweizer and seconded by Mr. Heath to suspend the rules. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second. It's been moved by Mr. Heath and seconded by Mr. Twist to adopt the resolution. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Moving on to ordinances, I ask Mrs. Knight to read ordinance 042, 2016.
Ordinance number 042, 2016, ordinance changing the zoning of in-lot 7504, parcel D08, 101146 in the city of Troy, Ohio, from the zoning of M2, Light Industrial District, to B2, General Business District. This is the location of 2569 West Main Street, has been recommended for approval by the Troy Planning Commission, third reading.
Are there any questions from council?
Move to adopt.
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Oda and seconded by Mr. Schweizer to adopt the ordinance. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted.
Mrs. Knight, please read ordinance 043, 2016.
Ordinance number 043, 2016, ordinance changing the zoning of part of in-lot 9891, parcel D45, 002549 in the city of Troy, Ohio, from the zoning of AR, Agricultural Residential District, and R1, Single Family Residential District, to the single zoning classification of R1, Single Family Residential District. This is part of the Halifax subdivision. This has been recommended for approval by the Troy Planning Commission, third reading.
Any questions from council?
Move for adoption.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Phillips and seconded by Mr. Heath to adopt the ordinance. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted.
Mrs. Knight, please read ordinance 046, 2016.
Ordinance number 046, 2016, ordinance authorizing the release of a mortgage and assignment of rent and leases for T&M Troy Property LLC and declaring an emergency. This is a loan that had been previously made. It has now been paid in full. Therefore, the mortgage lien needs to be released. First reading.
Any comments or questions from council?
I move to suspend the rules.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Tremblay and seconded by Mr. Schweizer to suspend the rules. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Move to adopt. Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Heath and seconded by Mr. Schweizer to adopt the ordinance. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted.
Mrs. Knight, please read the final ordinance of the evening, 047, 2016.
Ordinance number 047, 2016, ordinance accepting the final plat of Stonebridge Meadows Plan Development, Section 4, in the city of Troy, Ohio, and dedicating right-of-way. This is in conformance with the final plan, has been recommended for approval by the Troy Planning Commission, first reading.
Are there any questions from council?
Move for suspension.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Phillips and seconded by Mr. Schweizer to suspend the rules. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Move for adoption.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Kendall and seconded by Mr. Schweizer to adopt the ordinance. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Twilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted.
That completes the business portion of tonight's meeting. Mrs. Knight, are there any communications or announcements?
No, they're not.
Mayor Beamish, do you have any comments for us this evening?
Not tonight, Madam President.
Thank you. Mr. Titterington, comments this evening?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have nothing this evening.
Mr. Kerber, do you have any comments this evening?
Well, it sounds like we're on a roll, so I'm going to say no.
Mr. Frigge?
And I also have nothing at this time.
Thank you. Any comments from council members this evening? Mr. Kendall?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't. Just wanted to say a couple things. This weekend in Troy, for those of you who were not aware, we held an inaugural event by the name of Be the Match. This was an event that supported bloodborne cancer patients, survivors, donors, and I'm happy and proud to say that we were very successful and I don't know how, but the rain held off on us on Saturday morning, and as the last people were pulling out, the rain started. So we must have been doing something right. We ended up 3 weeks ago. The committee was really wondering if we should even go forward with it, and we decided to stay the course. We, in the past 3 weeks, we went from basically 30 runners to over 100 participants. We went from, our goal was to raise $10,000. 3 weeks ago, we were at roughly between $5,500 and $6,000. After Saturday, we ended up with over $11,000. And probably one of the most important things of the whole day is that we had 10 new people sign up as potential bone marrow donors, and we consider those people heroes because they save lives. And the people who were there, I think if you had not been touched in the past by this type of cancer, or really any type of cancer, you got a better understanding of what these things are all about. There was a gentleman there that he's in his 70s. He's waiting for his bone marrow match to come across, and the gentleman the day before had been for a bone marrow biopsy. His jeans were literally covered in blood from the trip from northern Kentucky to Troy that morning, and he still walked that race with the help of his family. There was another lady who had lost her granddaughter this past spring, 15-year-old granddaughter, to AML leukemia. And she came just basically to see what was going on. Her and my wife talked for over an hour, and they hugged, they cried. It was a pretty amazing event. Fortunately, my daughter was able to stand up to the mic. I had never found myself, for lack of words, but I couldn't get the words out that day. Emotionally, it honestly racked me, but she was, and she has been strong the whole time she had this disease, and she stood up there and led the festivities. There's so many people we want to thank for helping us out on that, and we will be doing that in other ways. But I just want to say there was one fun event that has never been done at a Be the Match, because if you look at Be the Match communities, it's New York City, Chicago, Philadelphia, Long Beach, and then now you have Troy, Ohio in there. the mayors in the other communities haven't been as accessible as our mayor was for this event. And the mayor, Mrs. Beamish, in order to try to get some things going, offered to sponsor a pizza party for the winning kids team. Well, we ended up with 3 teams, which was great for a first-year event. And so now the mayor's got to come through with the pizza party. So, but the kids are looking forward to it, and I know Jenny and Mike are too. But again, we want to thank everyone who had a part of this, all of the sponsors, all the people who came forward. And this event will be again next year. Today I had a conference call with the Be the Match Foundation, and they basically said it's ours to keep for as long as we want. She said that we are known now in Minneapolis, Minnesota, that for what we were able to pull off as a community of 25,000 people and just good down-home folks that are willing to support these types of things. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from City Council?
Madam President,
Mrs. Snee?
I would just like to send out congratulations to the Troy High School Marching Band and their directors, Kathy McIntosh, Molly Veneman, and Casey Layer, for qualifying for state competition for the 37th consecutive year at their invitational this past weekend. So congratulations to the band members and their directors.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any comments from other city staff this evening? Any comments from the audience? Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting. Have a safe and peace-filled week. Meeting adjourned.